Before we begin, I have a challenge for you. Don't skip this question. Have you ever been absolutely certain about something and later discovered you were completely wrong? Take just 3 seconds and think of one example. Got one? Now here's the surprising part. Scientists say your brain may have tricked you, and it wasn't an accident. In today's episode, you'll discover why intelligent people believe false stories. Why social media can fool almost anyone. And one simple mental habit that can make you a smarter thinker. But here's the challenge. Stay with me until the end, because I'll ask you the same question again. There's a good chance your answer will be completely different. Welcome to another episode of C1 English Listening Practice, where you improve your English while exploring fascinating ideas from psychology, science, and everyday life. Today's topic affects every one of us. Our memories, our decisions, even our opinions. You might believe that facts shape your beliefs. But what if stories are far more powerful than facts? Today, you'll discover why. And by the end of this episode, you may never look at stories in quite the same way again. Let's begin. Imagine living 10,000 years ago. No schools. No libraries. No internet. Just people trying to survive. Back then, knowledge wasn't stored in books. It lived inside people's minds. And there was one problem. Facts are easy to forget. Stories are not. Imagine an experienced hunter speaking to a young boy. He could simply say, "Don't go near the river." The boy might listen. Or he might forget. But what if the hunter told a story instead? He could describe another hunter who ignored the warning. He walked toward the river. He heard something moving in the bushes. He turned around. It was too late. That story creates emotion. And emotion creates memory. Thousands of years have passed. But your brain still works the same way. Think about the last movie that made you laugh. Or cry. You probably remember it much more clearly than an article you read last week. Why? Because stories activate your imagination. They make you see pictures. They make you hear voices. They make you feel something. And once emotion enters the picture, memory becomes much stronger. That's why great teachers don't just explain ideas. They tell stories. Great speakers tell stories. Successful advertisers tell stories. Even your closest friends tell stories. Because stories don't just deliver information. They create experience. And experience stays with us long after the facts have faded away. So here's a question for you. Can you still remember a story someone told you years ago? If you can, that's your brain doing exactly what it was designed to do. Now, let's explore something even more fascinating. Why do intelligent people sometimes believe things that simply aren't true? It isn't because they're foolish. And it certainly doesn't mean they're less intelligent than everyone else. The real reason is hidden inside the way our brains process information. Psychologists call it confirmation bias. It sounds complicated. But the idea is surprisingly simple. Your brain naturally looks for information that agrees with what you already believe. And without realizing it, it often ignores information that disagrees. Imagine two football fans watching exactly the same match. One supports Team A. The other supports Team B. After the final whistle, both walk away completely convinced that the referee was unfair. But here's the strange part. They watched the same game. The same tackles. The same goals. The same referee. So, how can two intelligent people reach two completely different conclusions? Because they weren't just watching the match. Their brains were selecting evidence. Each fan noticed the decisions that helped the other team, and quietly overlooked the decisions that helped their own. Sound familiar? It happens much more often than we realize. And not just in football. It happens in politics, in business, in relationships, even in everyday conversations. Have you ever searched online, hoping to prove that your opinion was right? Most of us have. We don't usually search for the truth. We search for agreement. Here's another interesting question. Who would you trust more? Someone who sounds 100% certain. Or someone who calmly says, "I'm not completely sure." Most people choose confidence. But confidence isn't the same as accuracy. In fact, the people who know the most are often the first to admit uncertainty. Why? Because they've discovered just how complex the world really is. Real experts ask questions. They test their ideas. They change their minds when new evidence appears. That isn't weakness. It's wisdom. So, the next time someone says, "I know this is true," pause for just a moment. Ask yourself, how do they know? And perhaps even more importantly, how do I know? That single question might protect you from believing something that only feels true. Now, let's talk about something you experience every single day. Social media. Think about the last time you opened your favorite app. Maybe it was YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, or Facebook. Within just a few seconds, hundreds of posts were competing for one thing: your attention. And today, attention has become one of the most valuable resources in the world. Companies want it. News organizations want it. Content creators want it. Even advertisers are fighting for it. But here's the problem. The easiest way to capture attention isn't always by telling the truth. It's by making you feel something. Fear, surprise, anger, excitement. These emotions spread faster than calm, balanced information. Why? Because your brain evolved to notice danger before anything else. Imagine your ancestors walking through a forest. If they ignored a strange sound in the bushes, they might not survive. But if they reacted quickly, even when there was no real danger, they simply lost a few seconds. Over thousands of years, our brains became incredibly sensitive to anything that feels urgent. That instinct once kept us alive. Today, it can also make us click on misleading headlines. Have you ever seen a title like this? "You won't believe what happened next." Or, "This one simple trick changes everything." Maybe you clicked. Most people do. Not because they're careless. Because they're curious. And curiosity is powerful. That's exactly why many headlines are written to create curiosity before they provide information. Sometimes, the headline is so emotional that people share it without even reading the article. Think about that. They don't share the information. They share the feeling. Another interesting phenomenon is called the illusion of truth. The more often you hear the same claim, the more familiar it becomes. And the more familiar it feels, the more likely you are to believe it, even if it's completely false. That's why rumors spread so easily. Not because they're supported by evidence, but because they're repeated again, and again, and again. So, the next time you see a shocking headline, don't ask, "Is this exciting?" Instead, ask, "Is this accurate?" That one habit can completely change the way you consume information. And perhaps even the way you see the world. So, after everything we've discussed, what can you actually do? Do you need to become suspicious of everything you read? Should you stop trusting people? Not at all. The goal isn't to become more cynical. The goal is to become more curious. There's a big difference. Curious people don't rush to conclusions. They pause. They ask questions. And they're comfortable saying, I don't know yet. That tiny word, yet, can completely change the way you think. The next time you hear an extraordinary claim, don't ask, do I agree with this? Instead, ask, what evidence supports it? Then ask yourself, is there another explanation? And finally, who benefits if people believe this? These 3 simple questions can protect you from countless misunderstandings. And here's something interesting. The same habit can also make you a better English learner. You might be wondering, what does critical thinking have to do with learning English? Actually, quite a lot. Many learners try to memorize hundreds of vocabulary words. They study long lists. They repeat definitions. And a few weeks later, they've forgotten most of them. Why? Because memorization without understanding rarely lasts. Advanced learners do something different. When they learn a new word, they don't just ask, what does it mean? They ask, when do people actually use it? What feeling does it express? What's the difference between this word and a similar one? Those questions create deeper understanding. And deeper understanding creates stronger memory. That's exactly why C1 speakers sound more natural. They aren't just translating words. They're understanding ideas. Language isn't only about grammar. It's about meaning. It's about emotion. It's about connection. So here's today's challenge. The next time you learn a new English word, don't memorize it immediately. Instead, be curious. Ask questions. Find examples. Listen to how native speakers use it. And then use it yourself. Because real learning doesn't happen when you remember a definition. It happens when the idea becomes part of the way you think. Now, let's go back to the question I asked you at the very beginning. Have you ever been absolutely certain about something, only to discover later that you were completely wrong? Take another moment. Think about your answer. Is it the same example you thought of earlier? Or has your mind already found a different one? If it has, that's not a sign that you're inconsistent. It's a sign that your brain is learning. And that's something to be proud of. The smartest people in the world aren't the ones who are always right. They're the ones who are willing to change their minds when new evidence appears. Because learning isn't about defending what you already believe. It's about discovering what is actually true. So here's my challenge for you. The next time you hear an incredible story, don't believe it immediately. But don't reject it immediately either. Pause. Ask questions. Stay curious. And let evidence guide your thinking. You might be surprised by how often that simple habit changes your perspective. Now, I'd love to hear from you. What's one belief you've changed in the last 5 years? Maybe it was about school, your career, technology, health, money, or even another person. Share your answer in the comments. I'll be reading them and I can't wait to see your stories. And while you're there, take a moment to read someone else's comment. You may discover that changing your mind is something we all have in common. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like more C1 English listening practice, that helps you improve your English while exploring fascinating ideas. Make sure to subscribe. And if this episode made you think even a little differently, share it with someone who loves asking questions. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time, stay curious, keep learning, and remember, sometimes the greatest sign of intelligence isn't having all the answers. It's having the courage to ask better questions. Goodbye, and I'll see you in the next episode.